Both major players will be playing a major role. They will be supported by a number of other nations, including Canada, Denmark, Spain, Italy. But one of the Arab nations of which so much has been talked, Qatar, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, may ultimately become part of the alliance. In terms of kit and equipment, well, NATO planners say that we have perhaps as many as 300 jets that could be deployed from bases and aircraft carriers in the area. At their disposal, an array of fast jets, including the British Typhoon and Tornado. The coalition also has the advantage of AWACS surveillance equipment to monitor enemy airspace and direct planes to any violators of the no-fly zone. Now, where could these planes be flying from? Well, frankly, from a variety of NATO bases across the region, Sicily, northern Italy, and perhaps even Corsica. Aircraft carriers could potentially be used in the operation, like the French carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, currently somewhere in the Med. French aircraft were the first to be involved in action in Libya, firing on one of Gaddafi's military vehicles. Earlier, pilots prepared their aircraft at Saint Dizier airfield before heading to join the coalition. These Canadians probably won't be giving a friendly wave to Gaddafi's forces. The planes at Prestwick Airport set off as part of the international effort to secure a no-fly zone and respite for ordinary Libyans. They will join a growing band of pilots from Britain and a host of other nations. There have been reports that Tornado jets have now arrived at an RAF station in Cyprus, a global effort coordinated through US Central Command.
It's a well-trodden path. We've had coalition air operations in the Balkans, in the Middle East, in Afghanistan. Air power is employed using a policy of centralised control but decentralised execution. So although you'll have squadrons taking part and units taking part right across sort of the northern side of the Mediterranean, they will all be still coordinated and controlled from a central point.
They might not be taking a lead in terms of fast jets, but the Americans are providing some of their air assets for use in the no-fly zone. All steps will have been taken to minimise collateral damage. The pilots heading to Libya know accomplishing their task could take quite some time and will undoubtedly involve quite some risk. So how might that risk manifest itself? How might Colonel Gaddafi respond? The biggest threat to NATO forces could well come from anti-aircraft missiles. The most dangerous of these, the SA-5, a medium to high altitude surface-to-air missile system with a range of more than 150 kilometres. Low altitude systems like the SA-6, designed to protect ground forces from air attack, could also pose a threat. And there will be plenty of anti-aircraft guns and shoulder-launched missiles which proved effective against NATO craft during the Kosovo conflict. The current size of the Libyan Air Force is unclear. Colonel Gaddafi is thought to have a number of ageing MiGs and Mirage fighters. But with a shortage of jets and pilots and a number of defections, the Air Force alone should prove little match for NATO forces.
Neil, thank you. Let's talk to our Foreign Affairs editor, Tim Marshall, who's here. From your contacts, the information you're getting, Tim, what is the latest state of play now?
There is a naval blockade in place, operated by several ships from several countries. And I mean, I think the headline is, it started, the first action, the first shots have been fired. It's worth looking at the map, try and get an overview of A, what has happened, B, what is about to happen in the next few days, and then even look ahead further than that. It's clear, it started, it's clear, the first shots have been fired in anger. We hear now that the French military is saying that it put 5 planes up today over Benghazi, and that they opened fire. First, they said 1 military vehicle had been hit, but we now hear from the French military spokesman that they think they've taken out, we don't know if these are tanks, but they've taken out several, in their words, several armoured vehicles. Elsewhere, there are reports that 5 or 4 tanks were actually hit. I think it's credible. It's certainly credible that the French have fired onto the ground and taken out quite a lot. What else is happening? We know that the Americans are up in Aviano, they're up at a base here, they're in Sicily. The British are moving assets down to Akrotiri. The British can also fly down from there. The Spanish, I'll use a NATO one for this, they are flying out of bases here, and all this will be brought to bear. There's also a Spanish submarine on its way. We know that once all that arrives, there'll be a no-fly zone right across the whole of Libya, but at the moment it just seems to be Benghazi. Now, what is the effect One more thing to say about the French as well, sorry. Up in Toulon, in the port, they've got their aircraft carrier. We thought it was going to move on Monday. They've obviously really got their act together, and we believe that it will leave port tomorrow, and it should be in position by, I'd say, probably late Monday. It can get down and be operational. We also hear that their headquarters is going to probably be Naples, probably overseen by an American, but the French are taking the lead and the British will soon be in action. Looking even further ahead, this has effectively frozen the battle lines like that. It's very, very hard for Colonel Gaddafi's forces now to move. And it's actually worth rewinding 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire, that was called Tripolitania. That was called Saracania, something like that. The point I'm making is that there was no Libya. There were these two areas. You fast forward 1,500 years at the height of the Ottoman Empire. What did they have? One area called that, one area there, and they ruled another one there. There was no such thing as Tripoli. So it's not that unusual in the Libyans' head to think of themselves as different people. Last thing to say, briefly, sorry, Steve.
No.
If you freeze it, what's the next thing to happen? The next thing to happen is that the rebels will be armed to the teeth. They will then go in one direction only over a long period of time, and the aim is to replace that with that.
I was going to say, Tim, and just briefly before we head to the next break, I mean, is there a sense, and no one's talking about regime change directly,
no.
but is there a sense with this that they are looking at some longer-term plan for regime change? They're prepared to sit and wait and see Gaddafi pushed out over the next 18 months, 2 years?
That's why I did the last bit on the Skyscraper, because although there is nothing to, they say it's nothing to do with regime change, although the French are actually hinting at it quite strongly, but it's the effect that if they do destroy his forces and freeze the battle lines, he cannot then take Libya, the rest of it. But what can happen is they're armed, they start moving against him, and over the longer term, his regime falls. They say that's not the aim, but you can see if you game it out, that is one of the scenarios which could happen in the future.
OK, Tim, for now, thank you. Just a reminder, you can get the very latest on the situation there online. Go to skynews.com. But